Thanks to Blade HQ for making today's knife review awesomer.
ZDP-189 is right up there with those quote-unquote super steels and what it's able to do and the edge that it's able to maintain. Hello my friends, Late Boy Scout here, and this is my review of the Spyderco Endura 4 in ZDP-189. What we have here is an unusual version of the Endura 4. Not only is it not full flat ground, that's not to say that's really unusual. It actually started out, if I'm not mistaken, as this sort of saber grind, and then later on we came out with the full flat grind version of the Endura, which you see present on this Delica here, that full flat grinding. Well, it's not unusual for the grind necessarily, but unusual for the steel, the ZDP-189. The standard version, if I'm not mistaken, of the Endura 4 is this Vg10 steel, again present on this Delica. Not a bad steel at all, not in the least. In fact, I've really enjoyed using that steel on, let's see, here it is, Spyderco Santa Fonte 3. What an excellent knife. Love that knife still. And the steel on it, again, Vg10, is fantastic. Fantastic steel. So it's not shabby at all. You're not losing anything by going with Vg10. Don't worry about it. But why would you be interested in getting this ZDP-189 version? Well, I was interested in trying it out because this is what some people tout as one of those super steels. ZDP-189, along with, your S30V. There's the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. And how about your D2? How about on that McHenry & Williams by Benchmade? These are some of those steels that people will say are, kind of super steels. Extremely hard. Hold an edge for a really long time. Basically, bulletproof, adamantium, analogous to all that stuff, Do I really agree that they are super steels? Well, they are exceptionally hard. I can attest to that, 100%. And I know that from sharpening them, from having to sharpen each one of these. You use it to a point that it wears down, as all steels do, as all edges do, and you got to resharpen it, right? So, how easy is that knife to resharpen? Well, on certain steels, how about this one, 14C28N on the Leek? I find that not to be very difficult to resharpen. Part of that has to do with the angle of that final edge. That, I think, really is the key to any knife, the resharpenability of any knife. How well do what kind of a good terminating edge do they give you? This one here on the Paramilitary 2 is an excellent steep terminating edge. So that really, is not hard to resharpen, even though it is that very hard S30V. It's just a very even steel as far as, the molecular structure of it. So you're not going to find hard spots and soft spots along that edge. It's very, very even in its hardness. So as long as it's ground very well from the factory, you're not going to have a difficult time resharpening it. Or if you can at least come up with a very stable and, I guess the word is consistent means of getting the right angle on your edge, then I guess it doesn't matter as much as how it came from the factory. But I think that's the biggest help in resharpenability is how did that edge come from the factory? The D2 here on this McHenry & Williams by Benchmade, that terminating edge is a little less steep. It's still pretty good, but it could use a little more of a steepness to it in order to make it really easy to resharpen. Also, that little recurve there, that naughty little recurve, man, that's almost impossible to reach a razor fine edge with. So I try to, just keep away from the recurve when I'm actually using it. With the ZDP-189 steel, here on the Endura 4, you got both a pretty good steep edge there, so that resharpens fairly well. And I think it seems to be also a fairly even amount of hardness, not the varying degrees of hardness. I think that D2 kind of has that, by the way, sort of varying degrees of hardness. It doesn't really have the stable molecular structure that S30V has, but ZDP-189 seems to be closer in quality to S30V than D2 is. So while it has that extreme hardness, of S30V and D2, it's also got some of the real stability of molecular structure. It seems to, from my use. As far as hard use goes, ZDP-189, I'll be honest, I haven't put it to a lot of really hard use. Everyday carry type use, that's what I put it towards. But does it maintain its sharpness level? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Opening letters, opening boxes, packages, all kinds of random stuff, doing the random stuff that you do with your everyday carry knife, and then checking to see how sharp it is by, testing it on your arm here or whatnot. It's still real nice and sharp. I wonder if we could get a few hairs off right now, actually. Let's just, I might not be able to do this on camera, so I'm going to watch my hand as I do it. But we seem to have liftoff. I think we do anyway. Some hair removal. Yeah, we got some coming off there, as well as lots of skin cells. Hands are fairly dry in this cold, dry climate that I live in right now. That's fine. What we got here is still a pretty good razor edge. Not perfect. It is used, but it's very, very good still. So, yeah, I noticed that the S30V on my Paramilitary 2 also maintained a really sharp edge for a long time as well. So I'm thinking that ZDP-189 is right up there with those quote-unquote super steels and what it's able to do and the edge that it's able to maintain. All right, we've talked a lot about the steel. I think we have. There's a lot more we could say about it, but we'll leave it. I really don't go into the metallurgy and so forth. I really just talk about the usability of it. I'm a knife user. Let's talk about some of the ergonomics and usefulness and carryability and so forth of the Endura 4 from Spyderco. So we've got here a design that has been out for quite a while. They haven't stopped making the Endura 4 for many, many years. And I don't even know for sure when it came out. Some of you guys can chime in and tell me. But it's been around a long time. I did say Endura 4, but varying versions of the Endura have been around for a long time. So what we've got really is a tried and true and proven and very, very popular design. It keeps selling, so they keep making it. And that's the biggest testament to its value, I guess, in your hands and why you ought to pick it up, because it's been around so long. Some of the awesome features on the Endura 4 include jimping on the FRN handle scales, which work fairly well. And did I call them scales? They are scales because we actually have steel liners inset within those scales, and they are drilled out, as you can tell, giving it even lighter weight than it would have had otherwise, which the final weight, comes in at about 3.6 ounces. So an excellent weight for EDC or basically any other use you have for it. But that FRN is also got this bidirectional texturing, meaning that this sort of pushes you that way and that sort of pushes you that way, so your thumb really locks into that. And we've got a little jimping on top of there. It's fairly functional. And then, of course, we've got a little ramp up there that is extremely functional and really stops your thumb. A good-sized spider hole, as they call them, for easy one-handed deployment. Either that kind of slow rolling out. You can actually kind of flick it out with a little bit of a wrist action. Not hard to do. It's balanced well. It's got a good pivot going on there, which I think has some sort of bushings in there. I'm not sure what type, but they work perfectly well. Haven't really had to do much adjusting of any kind to the pivot in order to get that thing to both be really good and locked up really well, or just be nice and smooth. Haven't really had to do any sort of adjustment to it in order to keep that there. The pocket clip is 4-way repositionable, so you can get a nice deep carry no matter which way you carry it. Either this way, so it's tip up, or put it here and carry it tip down. Either way will be pretty comfortable for you. I like this one in particular, tip up. I don't necessarily like all my knives that way. But this one, you can make it pretty much any way you want it to be. So that's a pretty huge thing. I also like the fact that the pocket clip, as it kind of lands on top of this sort of flat area right here. I'll show you on the opposite side. This is what it looks like underneath that pocket clip. So that's actually smooth. All right, so when that comes into your pocket, you've actually got the pocket clip contacting that smooth area, which means it's not going to tear up your pocket when you withdraw it or put it back in. It's going to retain pretty well in your pocket, but not, you know, crazily so. All right, so we've talked a lot about ergonomics so far, about some of the quality of the handle and so forth, but let's talk about how it feels in your hand. That's a little more into ergonomics. One thing I'm kind of disliking about the Endura is this large forward choil, which doesn't quite fit both of my front two fingers into it. Okay, it doesn't quite fit in there naturally. I don't quite like the way that feels. It's not bad either, but it's not my favorite. I almost prefer to choke back like this in order to use it, or just kind of like, you know, do a little more detail and not really get a hard grip on it like this, if that makes any sense to you. I think that I prefer the Delica where ergonomics are concerned. Slightly, you know, it's around the same size, but slightly smaller forward choil. Works a little better in hand. Okay, so I almost prefer the Delica to the Endura for that reason, but they're both excellent knives. Generally speaking, though, that FRN feels really good in hand. Generally speaking, no real problems with it. You can also kind of choke back and have your thumb forward like this. Good ergonomics overall. So, I think I've said everything I want to say about the Endura. Let's take a moment and just compare it to a few other knives in its size class. We already talked about these two other super steel bearing knives, being the Benchmade McHenry & Williams 710. The other Spyderco, that's the paramilitary 2, but let's throw in a couple others while we're at it. How about the Kershaw Piston? Excellent knife for the money and more affordable than either of these three right here. Some others, oh, I don't know. I guess we might as well bring out the Spyderco Senafonte 3. You know, maybe put that over here next to the Endura. It's really kind of size-wise, it's in between the Endura and the Delica, and we'll bring the Delica out at the same time so that you kind of see that graduation and that relationship between that set of knives. There are a number of other knives I could put on the table to compare and contrast against the Endura, but I think we're doing all right there. You know, what we know is that the Endura is a great knife, like, you know, compared against many other knives. And you know, is it the one you want in this size range? Well, that's up to you, but I think it's a pretty good choice. Regardless of what other knife you stack it up against, I think the Spyderco Endura 4 is an excellent knife. Good for EDC, good for, you know, emergency tactical use. With that ZDP-189, I look forward to exploring that a little further and really testing it, seeing how it does with some hard use. Stay tuned, maybe I'll roll out some videos testing some of that. Until then, this has been my review of the Spyderco Endura 4 in ZDP-189. By the way, with that sort of racing green or British green handle, good looking handle, good looking knife all around. Thanks very much for watching. I'm the Late Boy Scout. We'll see you.